I could speak to you about this for hours, but I'm not going to. Just a few minutes, you'd be glad to know. First of all, thank you very much, Honourable Sandra Carr, for bringing this. This is, I think, an immensely important topic. It really is. But for a moment, may I expand this into the wider area, because the points that you've brought out is one part of a larger ocean of violence. And if I could generalize for the moment, we have a problem with violence in our society. Now, in this one here, we're obviously seeing here the weaker members, when I say weaker, I mean physically perhaps weaker, the women and the children who are suffering tremendously. But it's also true that practically all aspects of society are suffering violence. Now, violence is a method of communication. It's an aberrant method of communication. It's a failure of the ability to properly communicate with the other and also with yourself. And so we have a fundamental problem. Now, I deal with this as a doctor on a regular basis, all forms of violence. I'll come back to the violence, the domestic violence, in a short moment. But all forms of violence are to be repudiated. All forms of violence, whether it's in the workplace, whether you are being bullied, whether you have an oppressive manager, whether you are being physically harassed, mentally harassed, doesn't matter who you are, where you are, all of this is wrong. And the fundamental issue here is one, as other speakers have said before, one of control. Now let us get back, if you like, to the domestic violence, which is where the focus will be today. Control. Now control, or the loss of control, or indeed the perceived loss of control, always results in anxiety. Anxiety is the perception, whether real or imaginary, of the loss of control. And when we have anxiety, then we try and take measures to protect ourselves from that loss of control. Now, in the domestic violence situation, we have, of course, the perceived, well, actually the actual loss of control, someone who is being abused by someone who is stronger physically. But we also have the other aspect here of the person who is committing the crime, because you see what has been brought out here, and this is the leading on to what the McGowan government has done to increase the legislation, to increase the amount of funds being given to actually manage domestic violence, is barely scratching the surface, because we're not dealing with the cause. And as long as we don't deal with the cause, the situation will proceed. So it has to be a multifactorial treatment and a very complex problem for which there are no easy solutions. So I thank you once again for bringing this to our attention. It's a very honourable thing to do, and we must take this seriously in all aspects, because it is destructive to every aspect of our society. People are coming to me because they cannot sleep. Can I have some more sleeping tablets? Why are you not able to sleep? Oh, I just can't sleep. What's going on? People are coming with anxiety. They're coming, cannabis, can I have some cannabis, please? Great for anxiety. Why do you need it? And the stories come out. And what I am seeing is a tsunami, a tidal wave of violence, often expressed in domestic violence, which then is hidden. Now, I've dealt with this all of my clinical career. I have sewed people together who have had massive slashing wounds, which have to be repaired. These are the ones who survive, of course. What particularly hurts is when you see the children being brought in, the ones that we see in ED who have got diseases, damage, and say, oh, we dropped, the baby fell from the cot. And that it simply doesn't hold water. We're seeing children there who are in fear. I remember I've got pictures on my phone of a child emaciated just about that, hair's breadth from death due to neglect. And it hurts us, the carers, the doctors and the nurses and all the people, because we are seeing this and nothing can be done. Because I, in my clinic, find myself utterly powerless to manage this. Here, here's another pill. What can we do about this? We'll see a psychiatrist. I have to tell you, the psychiatric approach to managing this, if you've got stress because you're being beaten at home, because your husband's coming back, or your boyfriend's coming back, and is angry because he's got loss of control, because he's fearful for his job, okay? And he takes it out on the family because nothing is the way it should be, trying to exert control because he's wanting control, and he does that by doing awful, unspeakable things to the family, who breathe a sigh of relief when he goes again. And you say to the person, as you pointed out, why don't you just leave? And a look in the face, I see this in front of me now. It's so many years ago. A woman saying to me, being brought in yet again, being beaten. Why are you going to go back? And she says, and I'll quote her words, because he loves me. I have seldom heard such sad things in my life. So we've got here control, anxiety. We've got here a lack of adequate communication. And I would put it to you that communication actually is something which we all suffer in this chamber as it is. We're failing to make ourselves understood or to understand what has really been said. So what we find, I'll give you an example. It told me many years ago, husband walks in, wife is doing the dishes. Why is the wife doing the dishes, by the way? Why not the husband? Walks in and says, let's go for a walk. And she says, oh, nice walk, but I'm doing the dishes. She says, no, I can't go. She's saying, I'm busy. He then says, why? Which is a stupid question, of course. And the wife is thinking, that's a stupid question. I'm doing the bloody dishes. And what started out as a nice invitation to go for a walk ends up as a kind of a fight. And we've all experienced this, I'm sure, in some form or another. And then it degenerates, of course, into the smack, because you never do what I want. And it gets worse and worse. So you can see how the communication, or the lack of communication, has started this. So perhaps one of the solutions we ought to be offering, apart from the prison sentences and the court management, perhaps one of the things is to teach people how to communicate. When do we start teaching people how to communicate? And I've thought this decades I've been thinking this. You start when the child is about 4 years old. That's when we start to learn how to communicate, how to understand the other person, and to make yourself understood in a respectful manner. Because we're all different, but we're all the same. Who is going to teach these 4-year-olds? Because the teachers most certainly haven't learned how to communicate. Because this is a multi-generational thing going back thousands of years. And we have not yet learned to communicate as sophisticated, civilized human beings, because we have not been taught by our parents who didn't get taught by their parents, and so it goes on. And if we don't fix this circle is going to go round and round, and it's going to be repeated, and we're going to try as best we can to fix this. And I'm going to sit there in my room as a doctor wondering, how do I fix this? It's actually our job. We need to take this bull by the horns and fix it. Because it's a societal problem which we can manage. So prevention, I think, is the best way of doing this. Yes, we need to actually have some legal approach. We need to have some form of control of that. But I remember, I used to work in the corrective services, this awful man who was released from prison as a VRO against him. He wasn't to approach his ex-wife, but he did. He walked up to her, stabbed her 8 times, and was happy to go back to prison thinking, I saw her properly off. Foul. Foul. He's in prison still, and may he never come out. But what was he doing that for? To salvage pride? Power indeed. And so many emotions going, none of them are positive, because we haven't learned to communicate with ourselves or with others in a way which allows us to be true human beings, to be civilized, to be expressing that one universal power which matters, and that power is love, because nothing else really matters, does it? So treating that would be the way to move forward. Now, one of the things we could also do, and here I will plug a little bit, because you know I'm very much in favour of using psychedelics and cannabis, because what we're looking at here is PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder. We've looked at the sexy side here of our veterans coming back from Afghanistan, or the police suffering, and so we should. But they're actually the minority. There's hundreds and thousands of people in our society who suffer PTSD because they are suffering these things out with their control. And they're suffering, and we ought to be able to do something for them. Now, the medical approach, and I can tell you this from the horse's mouth, the psychiatric approach doesn't do anything at all. You can give as much quetiapine, as much clonazepam, as much temazepam as you like. It will not work. It perhaps might suffice to bring things down a little bit, allow you to be calmer until the other person comes along and beats you once again senseless, or even worse. I'm not even going to mention the abuse of children, the physical, the mental, the social, the psychological abuse of children, and how they then grow on to become adults, do the same thing, because that's all they have learned. The communication that we need to teach them is not being taught to them because it hasn't been learned by the parents. So the caution I give here, supporting absolutely the Honourable Sandra Carr, absolutely what you have said, that we need to actually look at this as a broader approach. Yes, we need all the money in there. We need the psychiatric services, the legal services. We need to effect a change in the thinking process of the whole population, because this matters to each and every one of us. There's not one of us who wouldn't benefit from that. There's not one of us who couldn't brighten the life of someone near and dear to us by improving the way we think, the way we speak, the way we understand, the way we communicate with themselves and with ourselves. This is an intimate matter for every single one of us. And I would thank everyone here to take this home and to work on this, because it matters not just for this very important topic, which I heartily support, but for every single one of us in this state, in this country, in fact, in this world.